So now I'm going to introduce our speaker, Daniel, and our Innovation Network Director, Luca, who is hosting today. So, Daniel, come on down.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Daniel?
Okay, so I'm CEO of a company called Happy Finish. Happy Finish doesn't work in the oil and gas technology industry. We're in the business of creating effectively entertainment, advertising-funded content across, and we'll get into it a little bit, across high-end digital imagery, CGI, and more recently in the more technology-based space, VR, AR, mixed reality, and a bit of AI.
Okay, can you tell us, what are you going to speak about today?
So yeah, I'm going to focus predominantly on the latter things I mentioned, augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, and how we use them to create experiences for the brand clients that pay us, and also for ourselves as well. Okay,
and finally, what's your personal interest in this area?
I'm particularly interested in the area that we work in, or how that might lead into the oil and gas industry. Yeah, I mean, well, why I'm interested in what we do is because it pays the bills. Why I'm interested in sort of the cross-fertilization is because I think we get the opportunity, playing at the sort of more creative end of the spectrum, to test and probably fail a little bit more than some big industries allow their technology guys to. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see if some of the things that we've learned through that sort of testing and failing process can apply to some of the problems that are faced in the oil and gas industry.
That's great. That's an excellent segue into Luca. So Luca, can you just tell us a little bit about why is this of interest to the OGTC?
Well, I think virtual reality and augmented reality are part of those technologies that are emerging across industries, and probably from the oil and gas perspective, still scratching the surface and understanding, so what can we do with it? You know, some of that has been used already. We are starting to see an application of virtual reality in training, because of course the thinking that you can train yourself in preparing for an experience in a hazardous environment without being there have obvious benefits. That's just part of it. You know, the fascinating world of augmented reality. How can you mix the real with the virtual and overimpose them, and maybe have the ability to see through something before you do something about it? That's all something that we haven't really developed yet. And again, it's part of the innovation hub, part of the innovation network. Somehow our mission is to find technologies from other sectors that maybe are more advanced, because they have more freedom to experiment and fail without big consequences, rather than the oil and gas industry, and look for this technology transfer. So, you know, when I first listened, I heard about Daniel on a podcast for the Virgin Disruptor on my way to the office, and I thought, that sounds interesting, so, you know, let's give him a call. And then we met a couple of times in London, and it's been fascinating to say, yeah, I think he's modest in saying, you know, he pays the bill, and yeah, I think he has real passion for that, and be on the cutting edge of the virtual reality and augmented reality. You joined a few years ago, Happy Finish, and yes, you were to play with the first augmented reality or virtual reality kit, and start moving from an agency into artificial intelligence. So that element of, you know, pushing the limit and trying to find, okay, so what can we do more? What can we do more? Is something that we can tap in to say, okay, they're pushing the limit. Can we maybe be 1 or 2 steps behind and look for application in our industry? And again, that's probably a question for us after the session today, which is, you know, all of you thinking, oh, that's interesting, or maybe not. You know, what can we take from that and put in the oil and gas industry?
Thanks, Luca.
Okay, so Daniel, it's over to you. Your 20 minutes start now.
Okay, great. Might be a bit quicker. Firstly, Luca was right. It's not just about paying the bills. I do actually really believe in this stuff, and I've really enjoyed learning and continuing to learn about sort of what are pretty nascent and embryonic technologies. So yeah, obligatory slide. This is sort of our how we at Happy Finish talk about ourselves. We often get referred to as an agency, like an ad agency, a creative agency. We're not really, but we're not just a production company either, and we're not just a tech company. We're sort of a hybrid, all in between. We've come up with this sort of jingoistic strapline working where technology and art meet to tell stories for brands, but I think we do a little bit more than that. So just as an overview, to give you some context on our background, the services that we offer, It started 15 years ago with high-end fashion retouching, and that's still a big part of our business globally. Lots of Vogue front covers. We work with brands like Burberry, Victoria Beckham, Ted Baker. Nike is our biggest direct client globally. So if you go into a Nike store, most of the images that you'll see on the walls would have gone through our studios. We then moved into CGI quite rapidly. It became, about 12 years ago, it became a thing. It was really important that when a retoucher was creating an image, if they needed something else to go in that image that didn't actually exist, it wasn't about sending a photographer out there to capture that. We could have a guy in the box in the studio creating that thing and then our retoucher could comp that into the image. And then things evolved. It wasn't just about stills anymore. It became about animation, film, video post-production, VFX. I joined Happy Finish, as Luca referenced, 5 years ago. 5 years ago, actually, 5 years ago in a few weeks' time. And I was tasked with creating a digital division. Digital has always been a bit of a buzzword in sort of the advertising industry. And it just so happened that I joined the week that the Oculus Rift landed from Kickstarter. I inherited a team of a couple of real-time developers, Unity developers, games developers, effectively, and a producer, and no work, and no back catalogue of work. And there was this box from Kickstarter with Oculus Rift on it. I was like, okay, let's crack that open. And I tried it. And it was a sort of wow moment. It was like, okay, this virtual reality really works now. And things have moved on a lot in the last 5 years. But that was sort of a penny drop moment. And I petitioned to the rest of the board at the time that rather than trying to do all of the other stuff that all of the other digital agencies were doing, we would just focus on VR, AR, and hope that that would grow as a marketplace. We got no work for the first 6 months, and it was really nerve-wracking, and it got to a point literally a few days away from us pulling the plug and calling it quits. And then Facebook bought Oculus Rift for, it was probably a bit longer than 6 months, for something like $2.5–3 billion US. And our clients started paying attention, they hit the press. And things from there have snowballed a little bit. We're now 130-odd commercial projects in about 4 years. Most recently, we added artificial intelligence to the mix. And that's not, in the context of what we do, artificial intelligence that we're not trying to solve the world's water shortage problems using AI. Well, not at the moment, anyway. If we happen to do that through trying, failing, and learning, that would be great. But we're leveraging artificial intelligence from a sort of computer vision and a creative standpoint. But more, hopefully, will become clear. I've often been told don't use quotes in presentations because it's really lazy, but I do. And this is a guy called Shuhei Yoshida, who's head of Sony Worldwide, Sony Entertainment. And he said, we used to say seeing is believing, now we have to say experiencing is believing. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the ability for technology set, the VR, AR, parts of what we do to create really immersive experiences. Like this. We were engaged by the view from the Shard, the tallest building in Western Europe. It was the tallest building in Europe, but the guys in Moscow have been to it. To create something which sort of augmented and created a new experience with floor 72 of the viewing platform in the Shard. And we made this. See some of the reactions. You get a lot of screamers. And this is built in a real-time engine, built in Unity. We captured the environment and created some specific jib arms that we needed to put out from each of the corners, capture really high-resolution images, and comp them all together to create a 360. And then in-engine, we built the slide. We're matching a motion-based platform to the movement of the physical movement that you should be feeling if you're hurtling around the slide around 100 miles an hour. And I'll skip on. What we found is by matching the physical movement with what your balance and your audio-visual sensors are telling you, we completely moved away from making people feel VR sick. If you try that content without being on the motion platform, it's unbearable to watch. You start feeling giddy and feeling a bit nauseous straight away. As soon as you start moving around physically, that goes completely. It was a real win there. So we talk about transparently immersive experiences. That's our goal, with virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, to try and make them feel as natural for the user as possible. It's not like interacting with a phone, or hopefully not. So, I mean, I'm at risk, I guess, of teaching people to suck eggs here a little bit, because I'm conscious that many of you will know what virtual reality is and augmented reality is. But I'll give a quick overview using this continuum, which is used in academia quite a lot. So what the different flavors of virtual, mixed, and augmented reality are. One end of the spectrum, we've got reality. And that's what we believe that we live in on an everyday basis. We believe that physically we're here, we can touch things. There's another argument that suggests it might be a simulation, but that's a completely different topic. Then on the other end of the scale, we've got virtual reality, which is where we're enclosing the user in a world of our device. They're completely enclosed from an audio-visual perspective and potentially from a motion perspective, like the slide. And that's anything we want it to be. We can create it. It can be 360 video, it can be CG, it can be anything. And then in between, we've got different flavors of mixed reality. Augmented reality, obviously Pokemon Go, we reference that all the time when we talk about augmented reality. It was really in the zeitgeist a year or so ago. We have mixed reality. Augmented reality is where you're overlaying assets in the real world using a mobile device, for example, something with a camera. Mixed reality, that's where that device which is mediating between the user and the real world is a little bit more aware of its context in the real world. It might have ZDF sensors, it might be able to scan the room, it might be better connected to a cloud-based solution. It gives it more information, it's more contextual. But a strange one that we're not hearing a huge amount about at the moment, but I think we will more in future, and it's augmented virtuality. And that's where it's closer to virtual reality, but there's some elements of the real world that come into it. And that's a whole spectrum. I have a slightly different view, that it's not actually a continuum or spectrum like that. I think if we get to a point where virtual reality is indistinguishable from reality, it's a bit more of a loop, to be fair. There we go. Okay, so who is aware of the Gartner hype cycle? Okay, let me give you a quick run through of what this is and why it's potentially important to pay attention to. Every year, Gartner release this, and they release it around a number of subsets of technologies. And for Gartner, there's some relatively flowery language. It's down the bottom, sorry, it's right down there, but I'll talk it through. And it's about the hype around the technology and how the general public and industries and people who might use those technologies feel about them. So the technology is born, and right there, this is from 2017. Right here, right at the beginning, the innovation trigger, the first time anyone is ever talking about that technology, we've got smart dust. And I will admit, I don't know very much about what smart dust is. But wow, smart dust. It's going to change the world. It's going to change everything. Everyone's going to be using smart dust. And you hit this peak of inflated expectations. And then, what people realize is smart dust is great in theory. In practice, it's not quite there yet as a technology. And the hype drops into the trough of disillusionment, where that technology or the hype around that technology may wallow for some time until the technology actually gets better. It catches up with the original potential that was seen right at the beginning. And then we hit this slope of enlightenment towards the plateau of productivity. As I said, it's quite flowery language, forgot that. This plateau of productivity is really when that technology is ubiquitous. Everybody knows about it. It's in everyone's pocket. You might say that voice, using voice on your mobile device, it's probably about there now. Here in 2017, Gartner suggested augmented reality and virtual reality were hitting those slopes. For us as a business who are trying to make a commercial success, that's great for us. We really want that to happen. But also for other industries, I think it's important to pay attention to this, to understand, okay, what technologies are becoming commonplace that we can leverage. Big red arrow. Okay, so Gartner back in 2017 recognized 3 mega trends in technology. AI is everywhere. Pandora's box is open. I think we probably all agree that's happening. Transparently immersive experiences and digital platforms. I would definitely recommend, and I think most people in the room are doing this already, do follow these reports from the big consultancy firms. Okay, so VR, what do we do? What do we learn? One of the key things about VR, one of the things that we talk about a lot, is that it gives you presence in the experience, and that's really powerful. The more we can get that presence right, the more memorable the content becomes. So we were talking about training, education. Presence is really the key thing there. Being in that experience means it's a more memorable experience. And we can create things like this.
Have you got what it takes to play for England?
Must be the new recruit.
I wondered how it would go down.
What's over there? Today, we're going to be tackling our captain, Big Dylan.
It's time to wear
So we worked with O2,
It's going to be a tough challenge.
and we had access to
Get comfortable in your position. Timing on the engage is
an
key.
experience which puts you firstly in 360
It's us 3 against them. We need to score a try. You're up fullback. We'll be
team,
supporting you.
and then challenges you to a number of real-time CG challenges in VR. You've got the experience here. You can try it. To see if you're good enough to make the England team. If you fail, it's bad timing. But that's the sort of thing that we do for brands. And it was really successful for O2. In fact, when they rolled it out across their network of stores, they saw an uplift of 2% of visitors to those stores. That may not necessarily just been about our VR. It's quite hard to say, but we like to think it was partly due to that. But VR, much like that experience, VR is, for how we use it, feels way more like entertainment. It's a little bit more like television. Lots of people don't have televisions at home. And I think lots of people won't have VR headsets at home. Lots of people will. But it's a little bit more like entertainment in how we use it. Augmented reality is different. It has way more utility in real time. When we're creating augmented reality experiences, it feels way more like we're creating products rather than entertainment. It's a little bit more like the mobile phone offers utility. It's not all about Pokemon Go. Although Pokemon Go is pretty cool. I mean, it was great for getting the word out and letting people know that AR was happening. But AR has evolved a lot since, well, this isn't obviously AR, but it's evolved a lot since Pokemon Go. Just give you an example of sort of things that we're playing around with. So here you'll see Alessandra, who's one of our creative techs in the studio. We've created a new application, brand new, that leverages AR Core, which is from Google. The new version of AR Core allows you to determine multiple planes. Previously, AR could look at the horizontal plane. More recently, the horizontal and vertical plane. Now, it can recognize any plane. So what we're doing here is a little bit like pointillism. We're capturing all of the planes and all of the RGB data. We had to create a brand new file format to keep them in one place. And then we've just released this, and we want to see what people do with it. This is interesting, but it's a bit abstract. In future, one can imagine using your mobile phone to just scan an object, and then take that object home and potentially see how that object looks in your living room before you make a purchase. We're on the pathway to that becoming real. Okay, mixed reality. Has anyone heard of Magic Leap? Right, we're going to hear a lot more about Magic Leap. These guys have had huge investment over the past 3 years, and they still don't have a product at market. And they've got a few images of the product, sorry about the resolution there, and it looks weird, it's kooky. The investors are big investors, billions of dollars worth of investment from people like Alibaba, Google, some sort of relatively unknown Middle Eastern investors recently. They've got something. We don't know what it is, but this is mixed reality. It's something that understands the geometry of the world around it and can add assets into that geometry in a real contextual manner. It feels real. I've yet to try it, but I'll let you know when I do. People ask me, when is the iPhone moment of mixed reality? When's that going to happen? Personally, I think it's when Apple do it. And more recently, this is a really bad screen grab for this guy, so whoever he is, I apologise. But Apple leaked some news. Personally, I think when Apple leak news, it's a well-orchestrated marketing ploy, but that their mixed reality headset, their glasses, will be hitting market for 2019. And I think when Apple do it, people really pay attention. And Microsoft HoloLens, Microsoft have been in the mixed reality game for a little while. We're a tier 1 dev partner with the HoloLens. I cut this little video together. It's a minute long. Getting now, just going to be just on time. And this should showcase a little bit about how mixed reality can improve efficiency in a business. I pressed the wrong bit. One more go. Should. No.
Recording.
Well, we skipped that one. We'll see if we can go back after this. But this is a really great use case of the HoloLens in the medical profession. So looking at a scan of a broken bone, a damaged bone, and being able to overlay that precisely over the leg of the individual who's about to have the operation. I mean, this is obviously quite a useful tool for a surgeon, understanding what they're about to go into, what they're going to need to deal with. I mean, you can clearly extrapolate that to different industries and how that might work. And I'm going to give it one more go on the previous slide. Sorry, guys. No, maybe not, because time's running down. But the previous one we can have a look at after if anyone interested. I'll send this deck around. But what's happening, what we talk about a lot is the shortened chain of command, and this is where a lot of the efficiency comes from. So back in the day, with the advent of the personal computer, the chain of commands to access and affect something in an application was really you had a screen, you had a mouse, you had a physical keyboard. You were interacting with what was on that screen through those interface devices. Smart screens started to feel like they were changing that. When you're interacting with a user interface on a smart screen, it feels like you're touching that interface. Arguably, the screen is the hardware there, but it's starting to feel invisible. When we get to augmented reality and virtual reality, particularly augmented reality supplemented with AI, that interface is all around you. It's actually a little bit more aware of you as the individual. You're actually in the interface, as it were. Then this stuff, the next generation, is a little bit cyberpunk. We're talking about human-computer brain interactions. Facebook working on brain typing at the moment, where rather than having to type it, it can recognize that you've conjugated a sentence and put it down on the page. They promise not to take your other thoughts. And then AI. So AI is pervasive, it's everywhere. I've got a minute, so I'm going to speed through. AI. So AI is going to have massive implications in everything we do. I'm going to skip that one. How we're using AI is slightly more visual. So we're working with a big sneaker brand at the moment. So the videos aren't working properly, so I'll skip on. A big sneaker brand at the moment, and we're using all of the data they have around Nike ID, it's Nike, to look at what trends we can determine from how people design their own sneakers, and how can that impact what's happening in future, their product design in future. Something that I've got set up in the corner over here to showcase is something we worked on with the Royal Academy. We recreated a painting from 1785, completely volumetrically, which allows you as a user to then walk through that painting. Rather than our artists just recreating these as 3D models, we used artificial intelligence. We trained it on all of Gavin Hamilton, who is a painter's works, and we used a style transfer technique to create the textures for the bits that we couldn't see. Okay, I think I'm out of time, but I'll see if I can get through before someone stops me. So, summing up, what are the things that I feel are important that might be relevant to the oil and gas industry? Continue to push the limits, like don't be afraid of failure. Bit of a Silicon Valley mentality. Be afraid to fail fast, and don't be afraid to fail fast and learn fast. And I created a few thought starters as well, but this is a little bit more for the Q&A session. We can run through these. So, thank you.
That's great, Daniel. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Almost made it.
Nearly.
Okay, so what questions have we got for Daniel? Don't be shy. Any takers?
Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Fraser. I work for a company called Apollo.
Hi, Fraser.
I always wonder, like you, it's funny seeing that curve going up to when this actually will become plausible for real-life applications. For looking at things like, I don't know, asset integrity. Beyond, I can see why training would be effective because it's easy. But when you're actually going to start pulling live production data into these things, or I wonder how long do you think that is? Because the technology is obviously there, but it's about getting that buy-in, I think, from people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's you made a point. The technology is there. What we see in the studio, what we're working on, we know it works. I mean, the video that didn't play earlier was from Feist and Krupp, the lift engineers. And it's a little bit of post-produced magic, the video. It shows one of their engineers measuring for a stair lift. Right now, I would not trust an augmented reality or a mixed reality tape measure to be millimeter accurate. If you were to order a stair lift based on that data, it may not fit. But we're getting close to that. But what's interesting is a company like Feist and Krupp have rolled out nearly 2,000 mixed reality headsets for their staff, the people who go to homes and measure up. So they're starting to use it. So it's about the buy-in, but the technology is there or thereabouts. I think there might be some legacy issues around why people don't adopt this technology early. The challenge is if all industries wait for another industry to do it, no industries will do it. But yeah, I mean, I think, there's reticence, but that's why I think companies and businesses need to sort of get started, even just in an R&D sense.
I think maybe I could start, I think it was Bill Gates saying that, we always overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, and we underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. I think that's still value for this type of technology. We always think, it's not going to be ready in 1 year. Or we hope it is, but it's definitely going to be there before 10. It has 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. That's where I think we start seeing some industry level, business level applications.
Are you guys funding any VR?
Sorry, just to quickly, if you're asking a question, just put your hand up so we can get you a mic, and that's just so it picks up on the recording. I should have said, my bad.
Fraser again. Are you guys funding any VR or AR projects just now within?
So I'm glad to introduce Stephen, our Digital Transformation Solution Center Manager.
So the quick answer to that is not at the moment. But we talk to probably 2 to 3 organizations a day on average. So we talk to a lot of people, and we talk a lot to academics. And we have had a number of proposals, and we've had a number of discussions. So they're typically, as you said, in the training scenario, but what we're looking for is someone who's going to work with us and test how we could take this into the operational perspective. And what Daniel just described, you could imagine that in certainly in the asset integrity space, right? So not yet, but we're hopeful.
I mean,
this gentleman here.
Thank you. Erasmus. It's just a question I want to ask you is, 3D scanning is already out there. Sites are already scanned, and we get these 3D models that we get to work with. The tolerance maybe is a little bit limited, but you're aware of, so you can make your predictions and make like-for-like structures and place things and etc. What's so different with this one? I mean, what would be gained so much more? I'm not quite sure why this is so much better. Yeah.
You're talking specifically about the scanning of real environments, LiDAR scanning. So
yes,
taking
in
a sensor,
comparison with that, yes.
Yeah, so the difference, so that gives you a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of points, a point cloud, effectively.
That's right.
That then needs to go through a modeling program.
Correct.
To then recreate a version of that, a virtual version of that. What happens with something like a HoloLens is the Z-depth sensors are in real time detecting the geometry of the environment and building a map of that environment in real time. It may not be as detailed as a LiDAR scan, but it's happening. The fact that it's happening at that moment of truth that you need it is very powerful. And I think it's really, the NASA, this is in the International Space Station, and Microsoft sent a number of Hololens up to the space station, just as it's a sales pitch for Microsoft. But it was also very interesting because they were looking at different scenarios, emergency scenarios. What happens if a problem with some technology happens on the space station that actually none of the astronauts know how to fix? This is a connected device. So somebody back on Earth who actually has the information to fix that problem can see exactly what's going on, pretty much in real time. Can also see a rudimentary geometrical map of the environment, and can start annotating in 3D in the vision of the space station. So, this is really rudimentary. It wouldn't be this, but hey, Tim, make sure you pick up this bolt and put it back on there, and actually annotate in his vision. So I think that's one thing that shows in an emergency scenario that could be super useful. Yeah, sure. Could help save lives.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay.
What other questions have we got? Gentleman here.
Hi, I'm Paul. We've been playing around with some virtual reality stuff to do with safety training. And one of the things that we find in the oil and gas industry, it's about where you are, where you're standing, and how you react to a situation. Is there technology that will enable people to actually move around or to feel like they're walking or running rather than having to use a handheld controller? Because you're going to have people in the industry who you say, right, do this training. Here's a joystick, go and walk around.
Yes.
But we wanted to have a real experience, then we need something to be without being in the environment, but to feel like they can actually walk somewhere and feel like they actually are.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're about to move into is sort of a new era for VR, which is untethered. So most of the there's a HTC Vive here, an Oculus Rift, shown by Facebook, HTC Vive, obviously HTC. They use outside-in tracking. That means you have to have a number of sensors which are constantly used to anchor the headset. They're looking for the headset all the time, or in fact, the headset's looking for them to make sure you know where the application knows where the user is in that space. Same applies to the controllers. The new types of VR headsets that are coming are inside-out tracking. And they're untethered. They don't need to be attached to a PC. They still need a PC to drive them. They don't need to be attached. That starts allowing you to free roam as a user, a VR user on a much bigger scale. That in terms of that free roaming, there are other technologies, and this is where AI comes in. So where cameras, more traditional cameras, RGB, like webcam, HD webcam, plugged into an AI application, can track in real time your body movement. So like a motion capture suite, studio, the Imaginarium in London, this sort of stuff you see Lucasfilms using. Actually now that can be done with less expensive setup. And you get pretty much a 16-point skeletal rig of the user in real time. So you have an avatar. So all of a sudden, you can move in a much wider space with a tracked avatar. And there are some other things as well. There's something called the Tesla suit. It's got nothing to do with Elon Musk. They probably should have chosen a different name. But the Tesla suit is a full haptic suit, which gives you haptic feedback. It could make you feel as though you're actually physically touching something. I've tried it. They gave me a demo. It was like, try and pick up this knife. Everything's zombie related in this world, it seems. Everyone wants to create VR zombie games. And I picked up a virtual knife, and they're like, now try and move your hand forward. And I tried, and they did something, haptic and ultrasound, that stopped me being able to move my arm. It was incredible. It was amazing. So you think about all those different layers of things happening, and all of a sudden, the simulation starts to get a lot more real. So yes. It's a short answer.
Okay, we've got time for one more question, I think. That gentleman, we'll just go with this gentleman. Thank you.
Most of what you talked about today, Graham, by the way.
Hi, Graham.
Hi. Most of what you talked about today was how it relates to reality. I take it you can build worlds with whatever you want to build. Your painting, for instance, and how you made it. But again, that's a virtual reality museum or whatever it is. Have you ever tried building realities with just data?
Yeah, it's interesting.
And if you did, how did you depict it?
We've talked about it. It depends on the scale of that reality, I guess. The Yinka piece, so Yinka Shonobari is the artist we worked with for the Royal Academy piece. It could be argued that in small part, some of those elements, the textures in that environment, were just based on data. They were just created by AI. The next step is AI, and it's happening, AI being able to take a sentence, for example, a rainy day in Aberdeen, and create an image based on that, or a number of images that then go together to create a video, or a number of 3D environments that go together to create a world. And because an AI is doing that, based on a subset of data, it's effectively creating realities from data. But we're not quite there. We personally at Happy Fish, we're not quite there yet. We require the processing power and the punch of someone like Google or Microsoft to allow us to do that. But it's definitely in the mix.
So 10 years?
I'd say maybe a little bit less.
Thank you.
No worries.
That's just almost out of time, so I'm just going to ask if, Luca, have you got anything you want to ask Daniel before we finish, or are we good to go?
Well, it's more maybe a question for the audience. Did this trigger some thoughts and some ideas on how to bring this to the oil and gas industry? And where to start? Any thoughts about that?
Have you ever considered something like that on a drone?
On
a drone, where you could go and scan a site, or have you done
drone
this?
scanning is already happening. We have actually. We've scanned the O2, the O2 in London, with a LiDAR scanner on a drone to give us a high definition 3D scan that we use in a virtual reality experience. Millions and millions of points, and it's a lot of data to work with. But yeah, that's happening.
But you can choose how much data you retrieve from that, correct? You could make it a lower quality if no need for...
Yeah, absolutely. I think
that level.
your choice would be to get as much data as possible from the actual drone flight, and then you can make decisions on how much data you use post that. But yeah, no, that stuff's happening. And actually I know some companies who are doing that, and they're doing it not just for... we found them and they're already working in industry. We found them and used them more creatively. So I'm happy to pass the details on if it's of interest.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so time to wrap up. Thank you very much, Daniel, for the immersion in the world of immersive reality. I think my summary is this is really becoming real. You know, the fact that Apple is about to invest in that, and the Sony did a couple of years ago, making it mainstream, and is moving away from the world of video games or entertainment. You know, the example that we couldn't see, but you brilliantly described is a good example of using that in the real world, in the world of industrial application. My summary is that there are potentially 3 key areas. One is the world of visualization, being able to visualize in 3D in an immersive way the vast amount of data or information from an asset, for example, and therefore being able to understand it better. There's the training, obviously, and the training, when it becomes so immersive and so real, then it builds that muscle memory of what to do in specific circumstances, which is different than just having a 3D model, which is more cartoon-like. You know, having that level of realism builds you the experience before you actually go into the hazardous environment for that. And the third key element is that augmented reality. How can I bring the expert onto the space station or onto the platform or onto the installation offshore without being there, and having that level of collaboration, mixing the virtual and the reality and the real reality. And I think those are fascinating themes that we are exploring here. So thank you very much for bringing the perspective from another industry, from the world of advertising, agency, and branding. And it's up to us then making that transition of, so what, how can we move forward and take advantage of this technology. Daniel, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.